you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Hello, welcome to our second episode, the Be More Baseball podcast. I, of course, am Jerry Coleman. He's the former 14-year MLB veteran and Orioles Hall of Famer. He's Mike Bordick. Wanted to remind everyone we're up. Our content is up on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube, all at the Be More Ball Pod, the Be More Ball Pod. And if you are following us, let it be known, because and tag us and Lido Pizza, you're eligible for a $50 gift card from Lido Pizza just by tagging us at the Be More Ball Pod. All right, episode number 2, we'll be joined by Orioles reliever Andrew Kittredge down in Sarasota. Looking forward to that. We'll learn more about him and how he's fitting into his new organization. Mike and I will also address whether the Orioles can record a few more bunt base hits this year and how valuable off days are in spring training, something I'm sure Andrew can speak to as well. They got one of two coming up this week. And we'll talk about what's going on with a couple of all-star infielders in our What's Up with Doc segment with Dr. Michael Jacobs, the Orioles' former physician for over 3 decades. But first, let's bring in our featured guests. As always, they're all sponsored by Pappas Seafood. From crab cakes to seafood classics, they'll deliver straight to your door. 4 locations in the Baltimore area, plus nationwide shipping. Order today at pappascrabcakes.com. I think I'm going to need to order some to be delivered down to Sarasota next week. And speaking of Sarasota, that's where Andrew Kittredge is. Andrew, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it. You can add this to your resume now. So really grateful that you're able to be here, and wanted to get to your reaction on your new surroundings. How are you absorbing things so far in your early weeks with the Orioles?
Good. Yeah. First, thanks for having me on. But feel very welcome here. Everything has gone great so far as that end. The staff, the clubhouse. I mean, the clubhouse staff, training staff, everybody super welcoming. Made the transition pretty smooth coming over from a new organization. And I've just have nothing but great things to say so far.
Yeah, a lot of positive stuff, I think, happening in Baltimore. And one of the most positive is bringing you in to help solidify that bullpen. But I want to go back in time a little bit, man, because I covered the Rays back in the teens, and you were amongst a handful of guys that, I don't know if you were a little mid-aged, maybe 27 or so. You, Adam Kolarek, a handful of guys all of a sudden burst onto the scene, and Tampa once again got back on the map with what are they doing with their pitching? And all of you guys went on to have great success. Got any secrets for us?
Well, I think just at that time of my career, I think it was a good time to get over and just kind of get some new messaging. I wasn't necessarily saying it was the wrong messaging I was getting in Seattle. But I think at that point I had made some pretty significant changes to my delivery and just kind of getting over there. And, the Rays have had a really good track record of pitching and developing arms and stuff. So, for me, knowing what I was heading into over there, it was easy to kind of buy into the messaging that they had. And, I think I was able to kind of turn the corner. But like you said, a lot of guys kind of around that time, the Rays were kind of doing some unique things. And I think a lot of teams have kind of caught on since then. But there's no secret that they know what they're doing on the pitching side over there. And I feel like I definitely reaped some of the benefits of that.
And do you think it was because of your slider hybrid, making adjustments to that pitch, or how you threw it? Because that is a devastating pitch. I mean, it's one of the, I think, more special and intriguing pitches in the game, because I think most hitters by now know that Kittredge is throwing the slider on the outside part of the plate, and it's a matter whether it moves laterally or has some dip to it. And you've kind of mastered that pitch along with the velocity of it too. It kind of changes a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's something that they identified early on. I know when I first got over there, the usage of that pitch was one of the things that they adjusted more than anything. I wasn't, adding a bunch of new pitches or changing, drastic changes to my delivery or anything. I think the first thing that they really kind of honed in on was using the slider more, because they identified it as my best pitch. So, that was kind of the first adjustment that I made over there. something, just the usage of that. And I think if you look back, even when I debuted back in 2017, I was throwing sliders at 70, 80%. And, had to since kind of adjust some things back there. I added the 2-seam fastball instead of the 4-seam. That was 2019. So, in my time in Tampa, it was kind of making some adjustments here, but a lot of what I gained was just, how to use what I currently have rather than making wholesale changes and changing completely who I am.
Do you expect? Oh, sorry, Jerry. Go ahead.
Real quickly, I wanted to ask how much, there's been in terms of discussion about your role within the bullpen with Felix Bautista, of course, coming back, and what do you envision? And was that part of the discussions when you came over here at First Point?
My conversations with Hyder and Frenchie haven't gotten into that too far, but I did talk to Hyde about it, and the first kind of welcome phone call to the organization. I think it's just kind of anywhere that's needed. I like to think that I will be in the back end at some point, but whether that's easing Felix back into it or early on in the season, you don't want to put too heavy of a workload on guys. But yeah, I'm willing to do kind of whatever, if that means throwing in the 5th, 6th inning, 7th, 8th, whatever. I just want to help the team win ball games, and wherever that fits for me to throw, I'm willing to do that. And, I like to throw when the game's close and coming down to the wire, but I'll do whatever is needed of me.
I think that's kind of what makes you so attractive, because you are arguably one of the more versatile pieces. I think you fit in every category out in the Oriole bullpen, and there's some pretty good arms, I think, in the back end of bullpens. But I think adding your experience back there, and of course that devastating slider, it seems to me the Orioles are kind of setting it up where guys are starting to complement each other a little bit more, and that adds, I think, for that versatility out there in the bullpen.
Yeah, for sure. I think, everyone, regardless of how similar guys can even appear on the mound, everyone arrives differently at how they, get hitters out, what their process looks like, even guys that have similar pitch types, there's something unique about them individually. And, I think as a unit in a bullpen, if we have a strong identity and we know what kind of group we want to be, then it kind of all, hopefully when it's going well, you get some momentum from that, and it's contagious. And I think, everything that I've heard since I've got over here, the messaging is very similar to what I'm used to. We really want to be aggressive relievers, but as an entire staff, and starters included, we want to be aggressive. We want to throw strikes. We want to attack hitters. And so when you keep that messaging really simple, it's really easy for guys to buy in, and that's the way that works. Our bullpen, we have the stuff, we have the talent to be really good, and now it's just a matter of putting that into practice. And I think, in my experience, the teams or the bullpens that have had the most success, but just pitching staffs in general, are the ones that go after hitters and just attack them and are relentless in trying to get count leverage, and that's the best way to get hitters out in this game. Hitters are good enough to begin with, but you give them advantages in the count, and they're gonna run with it. So, our job is to limit that, and the way we do that is be aggressive, throw strikes early, and take count leverage.
I wanted to go back real quickly inside the clubhouse, Andrew, and early impressions. Maybe anyone stand out as someone who can be the funniest guy in the locker room, or maybe someone at 8 a.m. who might be the loudest or most annoying at times. I don't know.
It's still early. I'm still trying to get to know some guys, but some of the guys that are more character. Grayson Rodriguez is more as a character in the clubhouse. I've been hearing Kowser's quite the character as well, but it's still early. I think we'll get some of that stuff. I think we got a talent show coming up, so I think some personalities might come out, and we'll start to see who are the goofs a little bit more so then. But yeah, I really like the group so far. really young, talented group, but we have some guys with experience too, and I think it's just going to be a fun group to be a part of, and hopefully we'll make a really good run at it.
More of the Be More Baseball podcast coming right up. At Pappas Restaurants, we've been serving up Maryland's best crab cakes for over 5 decades, and now we make it easier than ever to get your favorites. With 4 restaurants and sports bar locations across Harford County, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County, you can stop in for fresh seafood, ice-cold drinks, and wall-to-wall TVs. But if you can't make it in, don't worry. We'll bring Pappas to you. Our new state-of-the-art shipping and commissary location on Bel Air Road in Nottingham means you can pick up fresh-made meals or have our famous crab cakes and seafood shipped anywhere in the country. Dine in, pick up, or ship nationwide. However you Pappas, we've got you covered. Order now at pappascrabcakes.com. The Be More Baseball podcast welcomes Relief Shop. Shop Maryland's largest adult use and medical cannabis menu located at 1114 Cathedral Street in Baltimore, with medical delivery available throughout Maryland 7 days a week. Only at Relief Shop. It's saving season at Lido Pizza. 99-cent refreshing iced teas for spring and summer, or $6 calzones every Tuesday. There are tons of new deals and rewards for everyone, exclusively at LidoPizza.com or on the Lido Pizza app. Lido Pizza, a local legend since 1955, proud partner of the Baltimore Orioles. Effective Solutions, your one-stop shop for commercial contracting. Everything from excavation and site development to emergency remediation and restoration. Effective Solutions specializes in many forms of commercial and mixed-use construction. With a dedicated staff and a commitment to quality, Effective Solutions delivers every time. And now, back to the Be More Baseball podcast.
Well, you're a great leader, obviously. Great experience from Tampa, who I think should have been a role model for a lot of teams, mid-market teams anyway. Guys that don't want to try to keep up with the Dodgers and the Yankees. And your experience in the American League East, I think, is just going to be invaluable coming over here. That's what I look for to help. And, so, as the Orioles kind of, bounce around through, I think bullpens can be somewhat transitional, but they've been able to hold on to some pretty key arms, I think, and veteran guys that are established in the back end of that bullpen. That must be pretty exciting. But I'm thinking about, what about the younger guys? Have you seen some young guys that might help out that bullpen?
Not specifically any names, but the group here in general has just been fun to watch. It's kind of, you see that with good teams. Guys show up in spring ready to compete. And it's not just this attitude of, I got to get ready for the season, but guys wanting to compete and get after it. And you see that kind of universally here. I mean, it's there's this mindset of just going after guys and doing what you can with the opportunities that you're given. So, it happens every year. We're going to see some of those arms, whether we want to or not. And it's going to be a good opportunity for some guys to get their feet wet, but also see what they can do in this league and hopefully just step right in and contribute right away.
When it comes to spring training, we were talking about it, and we're going to talk about it a little later in this podcast about one of the common phrases you hear from pitchers is getting your work in and, working on some things after the outing. So what does that mean in terms for a reliever like you? I mean, you don't have as extended a time as a starter would, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think within your outings, you treat it like a regular season game. You're trying to get in and out of there as quick as can, but it is an opportunity to work on something if you are adding a pitch or there's something that you maybe feel like is a deficiency in you as a player that you want to hone in on. This is the time to do that, but you also are getting ready to compete, and there isn't really any other opportunity we get for this heading into the regular season. So you got to take them seriously. I think there's this kind of it gets misconstrued a little bit about getting your work in isn't competing, but that's not the case. I mean, you have to get ready to compete against the best players in the world, and just because February 22nd or March 22nd, that game doesn't count, doesn't mean on March 27th or whenever it is, it is. So, I mean, I think ultimately, as much as there is getting your work in, you have to dial in on what it is that you're trying to accomplish besides just, making throws.
Very cool. Are you do you consider yourself a max effort pitcher? Or I know you said you took a little off your slider to make adjustments. Do you try to continue to do that to change the speeds and keep hitters off balance?
I do. I mean, I am max effort. I am trying to throw everything I can as hard as I can and with conviction. I know, as I've gotten older and the more I've learned about myself and my delivery, the effort for me has to happen at the end of it. And I know a lot of times on video, it looks like maybe I'm not trying that hard, but it's more of a slow buildup to max effort at the very end of my delivery. And that's what I figured out, the last handful of years has worked for me for good rhythm and timing in my delivery. But it's definitely max effort. I'm trying to throw very good quality strikes over the plate as early and often as I can, and with my max effort. Yes.
Yeah, maybe to get ahead, but that swing and miss slider is ridiculous. Maybe more than anybody in the game, man. They are just swinging over the top. They don't know what to do with it on the outer third. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I love what the slider does to my repertoire, and I'm, I've done both. I've seen, throwing it 20% of the time, throwing it 80% of the time, and I feel like I've kind of honed in, and now I'm throwing it about 50% of the time to righties. It seems like so. I mean, that's a pitch that I have ultimate confidence in, and the feel for that is probably better than any other pitch. Even the fastball. I'm excited to get back out there and compete and throw a bunch of sliders.
So, Andrew, you come in just as they moved the left field wall in.
Yeah.
I don't know if that played into your thinking or
your contract.
I mean, there's some hitters that are very thankful about that.
Well, I pitched in Camden before they moved it back, so I know a little bit about what it's like to pitch in that ballpark, and that wasn't a factor in me signing here for sure. I think I would have preferred them keep it out there, but that's a ballpark I love to pitch in. Really young in my career, I struggled there, and I think I slowly over the course of my career started to get used to it, and I've actually had some of my better stuff in that ballpark. So I'm hoping that's the version that I am this year.
Very cool. Is the beard going to stay all year? Is it going to get nice and long?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I never really know what I'm going to do with it. That's kind of become the thing over the last 3 or 4 seasons, where just kind of let it get crazy. But yeah, probably. I never really have too much of a plan going into it. It's just kind of see where it goes, and one of these days I might shave it. I don't know, but more than likely we'll see the big beard at some point.
I love it.
Last thing I had for you was, what's the craziest thing you've seen at a spring training game in all your years, and what's the earliest you've been able to leave a spring training game when it started in all your years?
Craziest spring training thing? I don't know. I might have to get back to you on that one. But as far as me, yeah, I mean, I try to stay for some games. This and last year might be the first time I've been given the go ahead that, you don't necessarily have to show up. But I think that spring is a good time when you're trying to get to know your team, and not just, conversations in the clubhouse or whatever, but, watching games and watching guys compete, and finding a little bit about who they are and how they go about it. I think that's really a lot of times the only time you can really see that is when you're watching the game. So as much as it's not necessarily a requirement for some of the veteran guys to stick around, we try to get out there and watch as much as we can, and have those conversations in the clubhouse and in the dugout and in the bullpen, and just try to, build that kind of camaraderie and chemistry, because that's so important. When you look up at the end of the year, the teams that win it and the teams that have the best years are the teams that come together. And, without being too cliche, that is kind of it. You never see a team, hoisting the trophy at the end of the year and the guys don't like each other. So, I think that's really important to kind of gel and use the time that we have, so many guys together, just to try to build that good clubhouse environment.
Do you ever share your story with the guys that, you weren't a top pick and just had to kind of grind and persevere through the minor leagues and keep learning and the monotony of it? I tip my hat to players like you that have endured the minor leagues and made it to the big leagues and been successful. Do you share that with young guys about really what it takes to make it?
I'm very open about any of that. I am not. My personality isn't so much to seek that out necessarily. If guys approach me and have questions, I'm an open book as far as that concerned. But yeah, I have had plenty of conversations like that, and it doesn't always lead back to, the beginning of my career or things that I had to deal with in the minor leagues, but just a lot of it is just experience and big league experience. And, cause I've struggled in the big leagues too. And I know how hard this game is and how hard it is to just be consistent at it. All these guys in camp, everyone in pro ball, they're good enough to be big league players, but it's a lot of times figuring out how to do it consistently and doing it to as good as you can be, as often as you can. And so a lot of, the conversation I have, I'm trying to share my experience. I like to tell guys things that I heard that helped me or things that I wish I had heard sooner or things like that. So most of the conversations, I try to let guys know what my experience has been, things that helped me, things that didn't help me. And then just be open, if guys have questions, I'll just give them my best answer and hope that we can, all kind of help each other out, really.
Andrew, it's been a real treat and very insightful. Definitely try some Pappas crab cakes when you get a chance, and welcome to Baltimore.
Well, thank you so much. I love crab cakes too, so I'll definitely have to try one. And thanks for having me.
You're in the right town. Best of luck. Thanks again for taking the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Love the culture of Charm City? The Baltimore Chamber Orchestra is performing 2 extraordinary concerts at Goucher College on Sunday, March 9th and Sunday, May 11th. Picture it. The strings strike the first chord like a leadoff hitter, setting the concert's tone, followed by colorful winds, powerful brass, and explosive percussion, like a crowd roaring to their feet during a home run. Discover Baltimore's second orchestra and experience the unforgettable magic of classically captivating live music. Get your tickets now at thebco.org.
Everyone knows Greenmount Station in Hampstead, but did you know that at Greenmount Station you can bet 7 days a week just like you're at the track? With in-person teller windows and state-of-the-art touchscreen kiosks. And with Greenmount Station's brand new Bet Park Sportsbook, you can bet on all other sports as well, wherever you are in Maryland. Spreads, money lines, live bets, props, parlays, and teasers. The Bet Parks Maryland mobile app is now live for Apple and Android devices, so you'll never miss your next big score. Just search for Bet Parks MD in the Apple App Store or on Google Play. 21 and over only. Please play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. At Heller Coates, we ensure peace of mind. Our mission, to educate, design, and protect, ensuring that you get the right insurance at the right price. Whether it's home and auto, life, disability, long-term care, or employee benefits, our deep understanding of personal and business life cycles allows us to tailor solutions just for you. We specialize in strategic insurance planning for those who value protection. Ready to take the next step? Get in touch for no obligation 360 policy review at insurance@hellercoates.com. And now back to the Be More Baseball podcast.
All right, let's get to our For the Birds portion of the podcast, hopefully soon to be sponsored by the Maryland Lottery. They were on board all last year, and we expect them back soon. I wanted to ask you about improving on the bunt, though, Bordy. And it was, something you mastered at, of course, at the major league level. But this is one of Brandon Hyde's goals for the club this year, is to up the number of bunts that they record. They only had 6 last year. That was 23rd in the majors, or at least tied in that category. Cedric Mullins was responsible for 4 of those 6 bunt base hits. What about guys like, Colton Cowser and Jackson Holiday, guys that can utilize their speed, guys that bat from the left side of the plate, maybe upping that number this season?
Oh, I expect it. I think baseball is starting to turn back a little bit. Maybe not as much with the sacrifice bunt, but I think bunting for base hits is going to start to become more in vogue. Listen, when analytics started arriving on the scene, on-base percentage was crucial. And then we saw all of a sudden they departed from that, and the home run became super acceptable. So nobody was even bunting against the shift, and it would drive us crazy. What is going on? Don't we want to get guys on base? I expect the Orioles and other teams to start implementing the bunt, because not only is it it's a successful play, it puts so much pressure on defenses. They're just not used to handling it right now. And I think not just Jackson Holliday and Colton Cowser, why can't everybody on the Orioles show bunt? Because there are opportunities in every game to take advantage of the situation where defenses are playing. And I think we all know by now how important that first run is on the board. Why not lay a bunt down in the first inning? Nobody's expecting it. So I think catching teams off guard is going to be important as well.
Yeah, it always bothered me. It continues to bother me when you have the open side of, the left side of the infield wide open. You got a guy who is being given the left side of the infield, and he refuses to bunt down the third base line, basically because he can't, and he'll just swing away.
Yeah, they just don't work on that skill anymore. And I'm going to attest to this. They don't work on the bunt defenses because it was taken away so drastically that every hitter 1 through 9 was now trying to hit the long ball. So everybody said, well, go ahead. We'll lay the bunt down. We don't care. We're trying to defend the home run. Well, how can 9 guys defend the ball over the fence? I think teams are smart to try to take advantage of laying the bunt down, putting pressure on defenses. I'm talking from experience now. There were teams back when I played that bunted more than other teams. And I remember those Cleveland Indians with Lofton, Vizquel. It just seemed like it was constant pressure on the opposing team.
Yeah, and it keeps the defense on their toes, as you know as well as anyone. One other subject I wanted to touch on, the Orioles have an off day this week, and a lot of people are saying, well, gee, an off day in spring training isn't every day in spring training an off day. No, it isn't. These guys get up very, very early in the morning. They get, 2 days off during spring training. I'm sure they like to sleep in, but I'm sure they're on the golf course or going fishing. How did you treat your off days in spring training? How useful were they for you?
Well, I thought they were great. I think spring training in and of itself is kind of a process through how to learn about it, what to do with your body, how to take care of your body. And early on in spring training, it's definitely more laid back. Now's the time where things are going to start cranking up a little bit for all players. Internally, they feel that pressure, that sense of urgency to get themselves ready for opening day. And these off days, though, in many ways are spent as team building because, there's an off day and like 10 or 12 guys will go fishing, like you said, 10 or 12 guys will go golfing, and it really brings teams together. And then at night, come together for a team dinner. It's a beautiful way. I think Brandon's very good at this, setting this up, and I think the players have all bought into it as well. It seems like a very close group, and what a great way to meet your teammates that have come from other organizations as well.
And again, let's repeat, the routine in spring training begins early. It ends earlier than it will during the major league season, but it's a lot more exhausting for some of these guys.
Well, no doubt about it. Now, check this out. What about the guys that have to go in for rehab, or the guys that need to go in? It's their weight training day. So there are still going to be a group of guys, and many times almost the whole team show up in the morning to get their workout in and then have the freedom to go play golf. But this is 365, man, Jerry. You know that in all sports, there is no let up. And especially when the bell whistles, or bell tolls and the whistle blows, guys got to be ready to go. And that's what they expect in spring training. They cherish these days, though, to get close with their teammates and actually take a little bit of a breather. And I think a step back to all of a sudden be aware that the season's coming up pretty quick.
And beware, some may actually spend time with family members too.
Absolutely. Maybe the most important thing.
Yes. All right, let's venture beyond Baltimore, a national and sometimes international perspective. It's all brought to you by our friends over at Relief Medical Marijuana, Baltimore's best adult use and medical cannabis dispensary with 700 plus unique menu items, and home delivery is available for medical patients. We thank them for their patronage. Well, we talked about it with Andrew Kittredge, and it's the phrases that the pitchers often use in spring training. One of my favorites, unless it isn't, is, I'm just getting my work in. This is after a guy gets slammed for like 7 runs and 1 2/3. The other is I was just working on some stuff. And a lot of that is true, to be honest, because they are experimenting. But we heard a lot of these cliches over the years. We heard it from Paul Skeens the other day after he got batted around by the Orioles last weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, just getting the work in, right? But that's what pros do, to be honest with you. And even at a young age, when I talk to kids, I talk about the monotony of the game is, the working on the fundamentals. Now, within that, and that's getting your work in, working on those every day. And within that structure, then you can kind of tweak things and try to develop pitches, or maybe work on your contact point as a hitter, or how you're fielding a ground ball. So the work in and of itself is this incredible routine that every pro has established from day one. Stretching properly, getting your mechanics in properly, pitching fungo practice, how to properly receive a ground ball. All that comes into play. And what do pitchers work on mostly? Just their balance, right? Their delivery. So I've seen pitchers from the moment they step on the field, they're lifting their front leg up and finding balance. I've seen pitchers in Walmart, for crying out loud, lift their leg up and find balance. The most important thing. And that's what they're doing over and over to make these moves instinctive and quality.
But that's the thing, is they're basically just getting the reps in and getting ready for the regular season. The results are not so much important, especially for the pitchers.
Well, what happens is, now within that, Jerry, the results are the ability to personally just raise your own bar, to try to make yourself better. If you just go through the motions, it sounds like they're just going through the motions. They're not. They're working to improve themselves and their team and how they go about their business, and really making that routine as solid and as airtight as possible.
All right. I wanted to ask you about something that used to be a pet peeve of my former co-host, Adam Jones. Wanted to know how you feel about it. It involves our partner, Reggie Fugit. He was at the Orioles game last week, and I mentioned Paul Skeens was pitching. There he was, front and center, right behind home plate, sitting on the aisle, had a great view of this National League Rookie of the Year, a kid who got an MVP vote. I mean, Pirate fans would walk over Reggie's dead body to be able to have those seats. And yet when we watch the video or look at the pictures, as we do if you're watching on YouTube, this guy's buried in his phone during almost every strikeout Paul Skeens threw. It's like you go to a baseball game and it's a sideshow.
Yeah. Paul Skeens is must-see TV, right? I mean, you have got to see it. When you're there in person, you see these larger-than-life figures throwing the ball 100 miles an hour. You would think all eyes are on Skeens, but man, oh man, is this phone? You talk about habit. Holy cow, that phone's got everybody. And our man Reggie was in it and missed all the strikeouts that day.
I'd like to know what was so important that he couldn't, take his eyes off the phone and look up and watch this phenom strike out one Oriole after another and bring the heat. To me, it's a waste of good money, but he didn't probably pay for those tickets anyway.
Maybe he was watching replays of the strikeout.
My advice going forward, Reggie, is wait until the fourth inning when they pull Skeens. Then you can look at your phone.
Absolutely.
And I'll have the fortune, actually, of seeing him this week. He's throwing, I guess he only throws against the Orioles, but he's scheduled to throw later this week, a night game. I believe it's Thursday, and I'll be down there in Sarasota. So that'll be where our next podcast comes from.
All right. Well, take some advice from Reggie now and get your head out of the phone, right? Get your eyes on Skeens. We want to see that flamethrower do his work.
All right, let's move on and bring in the doc. It's time for our What's Up the Doc segment. It's sponsored by the Baltimore Chamber Orchestra. Here at Baltimore's second orchestra perform at 3 p.m. coming up on Sunday, March the 9th, and then again on Sunday, May the 11th, both at Goucher College. Visit the bco.org to buy tickets and learn a whole lot more. Dr. Michael Jacobs is a former Orioles team doctor for over 3 decades, back with us. And Doc, I wanted to get into Jordan Westburg and Gunnar Henderson. We know you're not down there being able to examine them, but we're hearing that they're on the mend. And I just want to know if it's precautionary, the fact that the Orioles haven't scheduled an MRI for Gunnar after he left with this discomfort. Is that a good sign?
Well, first of all, I heard from one of my spies that Reggie was on eBay trying to close out a sale. So that might explain why he was watching the game. But that aside, no, it doesn't mean anything. First of all, we actually took care of players before we had MRIs. And we actually, taking care of patients is like scouting ball players. You have to be there. You have to put your hands on. You have to talk to them. You have to get a feel for it. As I used to say to the residents at Hopkins when we had morning rounds, you can't scan yourself to a diagnosis. And in this particular case, it's spring training. You're ultra cautious. There's no rush to play. And as Mikey knows, a lot of players use spring training just to work on certain skills. Henderson and Westberg are clearly starters. So it just means they came in. The Orioles have an outstanding training staff, as we said. They have an outstanding group of physicians. And they assessed that this was something that just went day to day. And if things accelerate, they'll do the scans. Frequently, the scans are only done to change your treatment. The treatment always starts with rest and training work stuff. It's not going to change with the scan. And sometimes the MRIs are so incredibly sensitive. They sometimes show a little inflammation that may be there anyway, and it can be confusing. So the bottom line is, like in scouting ball players, you have to touch them, talk to them, examine them. But it does roll into a segue I wanted to mention that back in the 90s, when, as I used to put it, baseball is more of a carriage game. You know, Gillick would come down, talk to me and Richie. We'd handle things, and Brian or Jamie Reed, and it was very simple. As we've transitioned to these front office people who didn't play professional ball, who are high-tech people, super smart people, they love technology. They love it. And the newer generation of guys, the front office people want MRIs. I think sometimes, like, they put too much emphasis on analytics sometimes instead of watching the player. They want us to scan people because they sometimes think the scans can give us a predictive number of when the player will be better. And just like, as I said, scouting ball players, it's an art of medicine. It's an art of scouting ball players. And the scans, there's more to life than scans. I remember reading a book about Ted Williams. And the first scout that went to hear him was walking into the stadium when he heard these cracks coming out of the stadium. It was like nothing he'd ever heard before. And he went in there, and it was Ted Williams smacking balls out in the Pacific Coast League. So, you know, scans are not the be-all, end-all.
Hey, one thing about the scans, Doc. From a player's perspective, though, and I know when I was injured, I would want just from my own clarity to figure out what the heck is going on in there, especially if it took a couple more days. So as a player, sometimes I would ask, hey, can I just get a scan just for peace of mind? Thoughts on that?
Well, that's a complex question, strangely enough. For example, when you're in a walk year, particularly if you're a pitcher, you want no part of scans because you don't want anything in your medical record, which is now part of this process, that might hurt your signability financially. So we've had players with their agents involved want no part of scans. Other players will come in and we had such a great group with you and Rafi and Robbie and Junior and BJ. None of those guys wanted to be in the training room. So some guys are just, Doc, I'm fine, leave me alone. Other players, if they're really worried about themselves, will come in and ask to be scanned. So it depends where you are in your career and how bad you really feel. But don't think for a second that there's input from other sources to look 2 years ahead. Oh, well, I'm a pitcher. I don't want to find out I got a partial labral tear. So it really gets pretty complex in today's world of big business, and it's not just a game anymore.
No, absolutely. I'm going to stick with Westberg and Gunnar for just a quick second. And in my mind, both those injuries are early spring training injuries, like getting your spikes into the dirt, moving around a little bit differently, and then trying and wanting to do a little bit more along with all the training that you're doing. So this is, in my opinion, maybe just a little setback, but all these players have to be monitored because of how aggressively they train now. I've watched these guys, when they swing, every swing is as hard and as violent as you possibly can.
Well, I think that's especially true of Westberg. As I said last week, the new techniques involve core torquing, and Westberg obviously hurt his hand last year. He's probably taking, I don't know that, but I'm guessing he's taking a lot of extra BP. He's probably in the tunnel with the hitting coaches on the machines. So his easily could be an overuse syndrome from just plugging away too hard. Obviously, Gunnar got flipped and just fell on himself. And, every boo-boo does not need to be MRI'd. I mean, we've been playing Little League and ball, and, you just want to play sometimes. You fall down, and I'm sure my guess would be if this was mid-season, Gunnar would be playing, but there's no rush in spring training. He's such an established star. He's got his own timeline.
Got to be
like you were, Mike. Yeah. Just like you were, Mike. You came in, you had your entourage.
Oh, yeah.
You had your translator, you had your massage guy.
Translator.
You had to let everybody have their slot,
Speaking of that, Doc, and boo-boos, I want to switch over to Shohei Ohtani real quick and ask about his comeback, okay? Now, a lot of us kind of forgot that this is his second Tommy John surgery. And he also had left shoulder surgery this offseason. They're talking about him coming back in May. I know last week we talked about, inconsistencies with Tommy John and maybe the velocity isn't there. What are your thoughts on him coming back in May and being that same healthy pitcher after his second Tommy John?
Well, that's a complete black box. So there's nobody can say anything about him, even his surgeon. First of all, his operation was very mysteriously couched by Dr. Elatrash about what he exactly did. So whether he completely reconstructed him or he repaired something, we have no idea what they did to him. Number two, he really got a big setback with that shoulder dislocation. So even though it was his non-throwing shoulder, that surgery shut down his elbow rehab for about 6 weeks because he had to protect his shoulder from the surgery. He obviously couldn't rotate his trunk. He was in a sling probably for 4 to 6 weeks. So that completely shut down his elbow to a degree. Now, stiffness is the enemy of elbow surgery. So they probably try to keep his range of motion up. But strengthening, all those aspects of his training took a huge hit because he had to stop. In addition, as we talked again, throwing is all about torquing your trunk these days. And again, if his left shoulder is still sore, that could affect his mechanics because he might not be able to torque freely. And they have top-notch people out there working with him. And I think he's a Boras candidate. And Boras has great people working for him too. His rehab team is exceptionally good. I've dealt with them despite, he's a great agent if you're a player, maybe not a team, but he does great jobs with his players. So that's going to put a huge wrinkle in his rehab. So it's impossible to say where that stands now because of the lapse from his shoulder surgery. He gets a huge break on his shoulder, though, because the papers said, this is not private information, that he had his labrum reattached, which is typical. Now, typically, if that's your lead shoulder, that affects your extension, particularly if you're old enough to remember the Charlie Lau, George Brett way of dropping a hand and really extending fully to get your power. That's before your time, Mike, but he was a hitting coach once. But that aside, I had one of our top players did that, who was a switch hitter, and to put off surgery till the end of the season, he stopped hitting from the side where that was his lead shoulder. Ohtani, lucky for him, is a right-handed thrower who hits lefty. So I don't think that's going to have all that big an effect on his power than just his back shoulder. So he does catch a break on that by being a lefty. I know he blasted a home run in his first at bat. I don't know you could check his bat speeds and exit velocity and all that nonsense. But he's going to be a setback with the shoulder on his elbow, but he should be pretty good for hitting with his shoulder.
Doc, final question for you before we let you go. I did want to ask you, in dealing with some of these guys over the years, did you ever have to go through a translator to find out more about the injury and converse with the player via the translator? And did that complicate things in any fashion?
Well, we did, and it hugely complicates things because frequently, and I think it's particularly true of Spanish, there is intonation in how you say things that we're not getting. We never really had a problem because Richie's parents are Cuban and Richie speaks fluent. Now he just doesn't speak Spanish, but he gets the whole cultural background of it. So having Richie there was great. And Robbie, when we had Robbie Alomar, he's from Puerto Rico and is very sophisticated. So Robbie and I were pretty good friends. So Robbie always helped me out when we had issues like that. So it was, you really need to speak Spanish. I remember when Phil Regan was a manager, I heard him give a press conference, and he said, when I tell young people, if they want to go into managing, what they should do, he says, the first thing they should do is learn Spanish and go to South America and coach in the winter so you get to understand the Latin players better. And I think that's brilliant advice.
Well, Doc, we want to thank you so much. Much more from the Doc ahead at our YouTube page at the Be More Ball Pod. That's the Be More Ball Pod on YouTube. Check it out as he goes deep last week on Cal Ripken avoiding injury for basically a lifetime, but over 2 decades of playing baseball. So thanks a lot for that, Doc. And again, check out the YouTube page. Lots of thanks to our sponsors, particularly Eric Brady and Effective Solutions. They helped build this studio or rebuilt it. Also, Brian Kowitz from Heller & Kowitz for their support. Look forward to having Brian Bordy on the podcast coming up.
At Pappas Restaurants, we've been serving up Maryland's best crab cakes for over 5 decades, and now we make it easier than ever to get your favorites. With 4 restaurants and sports bar locations across Harford County, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County, you can stop in for fresh seafood, ice-cold drinks, and wall-to-wall TVs. But if you can't make it in, don't worry. We'll bring Pappas to you. Our new state-of-the-art shipping and commissary location on Bel Air Road in Nottingham means you can pick up fresh-made meals or have our famous crab cakes and seafood shipped anywhere in the country. Dine in, pick up, or ship nationwide. However you Pappas, we've got you covered. Order now at pappascrabcakes.com. The Be More Baseball podcast welcomes Relief Shop. Shop Maryland's largest adult use and medical cannabis menu located at 1114 Cathedral Street in Baltimore, with medical delivery available throughout Maryland 7 days a week. Only at Relief Shop. It's savings season at Lido Pizza. 99-cent refreshing iced teas for spring and summer, or $6 calzones every Tuesday. There are tons of new deals and rewards for everyone, exclusively at LidoPizza.com or on the Lido Pizza app. Lido Pizza, a local legend since 1955, proud partner of the Baltimore Orioles. Effective Solutions, your one-stop shop for commercial contracting. Everything from excavation and site development to emergency remediation and restoration. Effective Solutions specializes in many forms of commercial and mixed-use construction. With a dedicated staff and a commitment to quality, Effective Solutions delivers every time.
Love the culture of Charm City? The Baltimore Chamber Orchestra is performing 2 extraordinary concerts at Goucher College on Sunday, March 9th and Sunday, May 11th. Picture it. The strings strike the first chord like a leadoff hitter, setting the concert's tone, followed by colorful winds, powerful brass, and explosive percussion, like a crowd roaring to their feet during a home run. Discover Baltimore's second orchestra and experience the unforgettable magic of classically captivating live music. Get your tickets now at thebco.org.
Everyone knows Greenmount Station in Hampstead, but did you know that at Greenmount Station you can bet 7 days a week just like you're at the track? With in-person teller windows and state-of-the-art touchscreen kiosks. And with Greenmount Station's brand new Bet Park Sportsbook, you can bet on all other sports as well, wherever you are in Maryland. Spreads, money lines, live bets, props, parlays, and teasers. The Bet Parks Maryland mobile app is now live for Apple and Android devices, so you'll never miss your next big score. Just search for Bet Parks MD in the Apple App Store or on Google Play. 21 and over only. Please play responsibly. For help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. At Heller Kowitz, we ensure peace of mind. Our mission, to educate, design, and protect, ensuring that you get the right insurance at the right price. Whether it's home and auto, life, disability, long-term care, or employee benefits, our deep understanding of personal and business life cycles allows us to tailor solutions just for you. We specialize in strategic insurance planning for those who value protection. Ready to take the next step? Get in touch for no obligation 360 policy review at insurance@hellerkowitz.com.
Also, much gratitude to senior executive producer Chip Franklin for putting this whole episode together, Bordy. All Chip wants is world peace, and that's in his own household. Until next time, be real, be kind, and make sure to be back next week. We're broadcasting from Sarasota, episode 3 of the Be More Baseball podcast.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.